يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program. This is Let's Talk, coming to you live this Saturday morning from our Sunning Hill studios right here in Johannesburg. Great to be with you and some great topics that we're going to be discussing. We're looking at World Diabetes Day. We're also looking at the Anti-Hijacking Academy, and we'll be wrapping up with the Palestinian Solidarity Alliance. They're here to talk to us about the 5-kilometer walk in aid of raising funds for the plight of the Palestinian people. We'll kick off with diabetes. It was World Diabetes Day on the 14th of November, a couple of days ago. But for the rest of the month, we observe World Diabetes Month. And it is said that in Africa alone, the total number of people that will present with diabetes in the year 2040 will increase by approximately 20 million, and that's not a figure to be sneezed at. But let's look at the reasons, the signs, the symptoms, and treatment options for people with the different types of diabetes, and particularly this year, the focus on women and diabetes. We're going to look at the link. We're going to see why we are focusing on women and what can be done about diabetes. So in studio with me is Dr. Kershalan Naidu. He is an endocrinologist and lots more. He's going to tell us exactly what it is that he does, where he's based, and if you do want to engage with him, then of course you can. He will tell us where and how you can get in touch with him. Dr. Kershalan, morning. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you, and I see you wearing blue in aid of World Diabetes Day. The theme and the color is blue this year around. Why?
So specifically with respect to the diabetes and the campaign, it's more related to diabetes being a global health burden. And you've quoted a few figures. So in sub-Saharan sub-Saharan Africa, there's about 20 million diabetics, and that number has projected to increase by about 20 million in the next 20 years or so. In South Africa itself, we're looking at about 1 to 2 million diabetics, and the proportion of women that with diabetes, we don't have any accurate figures at the moment with respect to that. But the last study done in 2012 showed that 1 in 10 South Africans are diabetic. So huge numbers.
Every year without fail, the diabetic associations and foundations all around the world, I should imagine, get together and decide what the focus will be for that particular year. This year it is women, and I'm wondering why. Has it to do with education and women managing their children and their spouses better and supporting them better? Or is the focus more about women now, presenting with this disease?
So the focus is multifactorial. So number one, from gender roles, power dynamics, the patriarchal society we live in, that affects healthcare options and health-seeking behavior. For example, you as a mother would know that you'd often neglect yourself for the sake of taking care of the family, and that sometimes has an effect on delayed diagnosis and treatment options. Another thing that's important is socioeconomic status, so especially in developing countries. So low socioeconomic background is often associated with poor diet, lack of exercise, and obesity, which are major risk factors for diabetes. And then lastly, or most importantly, is the aspect of gestational diabetes or diabetes in pregnancy.
All right, we're going to talk about the different types of diabetes. We're also going to try and understand which is more serious. I'm not sure if we can even put that question to you. I should imagine all of them come with their own set of risks. But let's look at you. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, where you practice from, and also understand that you lecture at Wits University. So let's go right to the beginning.
Okay. So I practice at Netcare Waterfall City Hospital. That's in Midrand. I have a special interest in diabetes as well as hormones, thyroid disorders, and also to deal a bit with fertility as well. I do a lot of, I'm one of the only ones in the country that actually do thyroid sonar, so I specialize in thyroid cancers as well. And I lecture at WITS, so mainly to the undergraduates, postgraduates, and I'm involved in a bit of research as well from a thyroid-related point of view.
I think we're going to leave I'd love to ask you a whole host of questions around thyroid. Let's leave it for another time, because seeing that you are involved in that research, I think it's going to be very interesting. We can talk about it on air, but we'll leave it off for another time. But just one quick question around thyroid and diabetes. What is the link?
So the absolute link is with type 1 diabetes, which I'll explain in a bit more detail. But both of them with hypothyroidism are autoimmune conditions. So it's basically where your immune system attacks the glands. So in thyroid problem, it attacks the thyroid, and in type 1 diabetes, it attacks the pancreatic beta cells, which produce insulin. So that's the causal link with the two, both being autoimmune conditions.
All right, you talked about the diet issue. You spoke about the lower socio-economic families where obviously the diets are very poor and resulting in all the wrong choices because of affordability. But on the flip side of that is those people that are very affluent also present with diabetes. What is that telling us? Again, with affordability, we are still going on and making all of the wrong choices.
Absolutely. I mean, being Indian, you know, go to the family function or a wedding, and you've got the delicious biryani.
10-course meals.
Yeah, and then often you find yourself taking a second helping or even a third helping. And I'm sure you've got a lot of listeners at home that are sheepishly grinning, and they're all guilty of it. And then you have a massive meal, and then after that you've got to have cake, and then you've got to have the decadent soji.
Oh, absolutely.
And with that, you've got to have your tea with
and
sugar.
And puddings and what have you.
All of that. So if you look at one meal and the amount of carbohydrates as well as sugar content, and if that's repeated, and with a sedentary lifestyle, you tend to put on weight, and that's a major risk factor for diabetes itself. So as you mentioned, affluent as well as lower socioeconomic groups, it is a major problem, but diet is absolutely essential in preventing this condition.
When we talk diet, are we talking, I always worry about people who ingest a lot of sugar or eat a lot of cake and sweets and biscuits, etc. throughout, you know, just being part of their diet, and especially fizzy drinks that are full of sugar. Is that the reason why we're presenting with more diabetes, or is it more an issue around carbs, carb intake?
Sugar content and carbs itself, but a common problem is the fizzy drinks that you've mentioned. So, for example, in a can of Coke, 10 teaspoons of sugar. In 2 liters of Coke, it's about 28 teaspoons of sugar. So that high sugar content will predispose you, in addition to refined carbohydrates, portion size, etc. It's a multifactorial problem, which will predispose one to diabetes.
The different types of diabetes, I mentioned 3 when we were talking off air, and you said to me there were more. Let's look at them, and which would you say, or is this an unfair question, which would you say is the deadliest or the most, the one that one should try and avoid if you can, work hard at keeping a very balanced lifestyle so that you're not exposing yourself to that risk factor?
Okay. By far the commonest type of diabetes is type 2 diabetes. I've touched on type 1 diabetes, but type 2 being the commonest is responsible for majority of complications, especially from cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, etc. So that's being the commonest. Then you get a type 3 diabetes, which is actually broken down to multiple different types of diabetes. So you've identified specific genetic defects, and it was previously called MODIs, but there are 15 or 20 different types of those. I won't go into the details on that. Then you get diabetes associated with endocrine problems. So for example, hormonal imbalances, for example, Cushing's syndrome or acromegaly, etc. drugs. So common thing is prednisone or steroid use can cause hyperglycemia and lead to diabetes as well. There are various genetic syndromes, for example, Down syndrome, etc., that's associated with diabetes. And then diseases of the pancreas. Because the pancreas produces insulin, any diseases affecting that, so be it chronic pancreatitis, stones, pancreatic cancer, etc., will cause diabetes. So that encompasses the sort of type 3 diabetes, which is one of the World Health Organization classifications. And then on that, you've got type 4 diabetes, which is gestational diabetes.
So mom's got to really take care of herself during her pregnancy, because not only is she at risk, she can pass it on to baby, the unborn baby.
Yes. So what happens is with gestational diabetes is that the child is at risk later on in life, or there's a predisposition to obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease if there's poorly controlled sugars in pregnancy.
So baby is not necessarily born with the condition.
Yeah, so the baby's not born with the condition, but via various genetic factors and epigenetic factors. So what that means is it's the way we read our DNA. Or with the way the DNA is expressed or the genes are expressed is influenced by what happens while the fetus is developing, and that has long-term effects as well.
I've heard or I've read somewhere that a lot of women seem to present with diabetes when they're pregnant, meaning that they haven't picked it up prior to the pregnancy, and during one of their checkups, or depending how it presents, doctor then tells them that you've now, got a diabetes. Why does that happen? What's going on? And obviously she had a predisposition to the condition, but why would it present specifically when she's expecting?
Okay, so that's an excellent question. So diabetes, so there's two concepts with respect to diabetes in pregnancy. One is gestational diabetes, or diabetes that's first diagnosed in pregnancy. The other one is that a pre-existing diabetic that becomes pregnant. Now with gestational diabetes, you get a predisposition, so you may be overweight, inactive, etc. But what happens during pregnancy is you've got various placental hormones, or hormones that are only produced in pregnancy, that cause insulin resistance. So one of them is called human placental lactogen. So it causes insulin resistance. So in other words, your insulin doesn't work that well, which leads to hyperglycemia or high glucose levels.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the final question for this part of the program before we go for our first ad break. Let's look at the issue around the diet of a pregnant woman. I mean, oftentimes they put on a lot of, some women put on a lot of weight in their pregnancy, and it's kind of accepted because we feel that she's feeding two people, she's feeding an extra person, so it's okay, and you're going to lose the weight after baby is born. Your thoughts on that issue, and why is it that some people put on such a huge amount of weight as opposed to other people who seem to control their weight relatively well?
So an excellent question as well. The problem with that is, as you said, a lot of people say, I'm eating for two, so I should double my intake.
And also those crazy cravings that you get.
Of course. But nutrition during pregnancy is a very complicated topic, because you need to ensure that there's enough nutrition for the developing fetus, yet not overfeed yourself or take too much nutrients in to predispose you to diabetes. So ideally, one should get a tailored diet or a program from a dietitian during pregnancy.
Okay, I'm talking to Dr. Kershlan Naidu. He's an endocrinologist. He is at a hospital here in Johannesburg in Midrand, and he also lectures at Wits University. We're talking diabetes. It was World Diabetes Day on the 14th, and the focus this year is on women, and as you've heard, we've touched on women, pregnancy, and the diabetes presenting during their pregnancies. If you have any questions or comments, we're happy to take your calls on the open line. But let's first take our first ad break for the day. Questions. Welcome back. This is Let's Talk with me, Julie Alli. We're talking diabetes and specifically diabetes in women. My guest on the show this morning is Dr. Kershalan Naidu. He is locally based. And of course, if you would like to consult with him, we will once again ask him to remind us where he practices from. And we're going to continue the discussion on diabetes in women. Remind us where you practice from.
Netcare Waterfall City Hospital in Midrand.
There you go. And you lecture at Wits University.
Yeah.
You're not in private practice or?
In private practice at
Waterfall.
Yes.
Okay, there you go. We're talking diabetes in women, and we were talking about pregnant women when they present with diabetes. How serious is that situation? Does it complicate their pregnancies? And how are they meant to be managing the condition during their pregnancy? I'm thinking, you know, here I am pregnant and you tell me that I've got diabetes. I'm thinking about the stress levels as well going through the roof for me.
Okay, so some of the complications of uncontrolled sugars in pregnancy are preterm labor, so you can end up with a premature baby, stillbirth, miscarriage, larger babies, so babies more than 4.5 kgs, and that necessitates one having cesarean sections. There can be birth injuries as well. Also, with respect to the fetus, there's increased incidence of respiratory distress and ICU admissions. Also increased incidence of eclampsia, preeclampsia for the mum. So it does place a number of risks on the mum as well as the fetus. And we've already spoken about the long-term effects. At this stage, one of the other complications is that with gestational diabetes, they does carry a lifetime risk of type 2 diabetes. For example, if one's BMI or body mass index is more than 30 or they're overweight, their risk of developing diabetes is 75%.
Sure.
Whereas if they tend to get the weight down post-pregnancy, your risk drops to about 25%. So anybody who's had gestational diabetes needs to have regular screening. So the guidelines would recommend anywhere between 1 and 3 years, you just screen for diabetes.
When we look at the pregnant mom and she presents with diabetes, whether she was diabetic before pregnancy or whether she presents with it during her pregnancy, what does her treatment options look like? Let's talk about that because I think it's very important.
Okay, so depending on the degree of diabetes, if it's very mild, one can use certain oral agents. There are 2 oral agents that are, or tablets that can be used in diabetes.
With no risk to baby.
No risk to baby. But one may need to go on to insulin as well. Now, as the pregnancy progresses, I spoke about insulin resistance worsening. So it tends to worsen up to up to 32 weeks gestation. So you need to constantly monitor the sugar. Unfortunately, pregnant moms would need to monitor their sugar 6 to 7 times a day for the duration of the pregnancy, which is extremely difficult. And if one
would that be a finger prick?
A finger prick test. And in
6
addition
times
to,
a day?
Yeah, 6 times a day.
Goodness me.
Yeah, so that's it's a lot of finger pricks. In addition to that, one may need to be on insulin, which can entail about 4 injections a day as well. But what's important is close monitoring and regular adjustment of doses. So you need to adjust it every 2 weeks to make sure your levels are running between 4 and 5. So we tend to run pregnant diabetics a lot tighter, and then if the sugars are well controlled, there's no complications to mom and baby, and you can deliver at 37, 38 weeks.
Sure, that sounds like a very big burden that mom is carrying. Post-pregnancy, once baby is born and mom then follows, I should imagine during the pregnancy as well, she is on a very strict diet.
Yes. Absolutely. So strict diet, exercise, but again, because it's such a complicated topic, one should consult a dietitian to have an individualized or tailored program. Once mom delivers, most of the time the diabetes or the glucose levels normalize, but it's very important to get an oral glucose tolerance test around 6 to 10 weeks post-pregnancy. Because you just need to make sure that the diabetes has gone away. And if anybody who's had an oral glucose tolerance test will understand, it's 75 grams of glucose, which is very nauseous, makes you feel very nauseous and sick. But unfortunately, that's one of the gold standards for diagnosing the diabetes.
Is it possible for certain women to present with diabetes in their pregnancy and after baby is born, that, you know, due to the well-managed situation during the pregnancy, that they don't present with the condition and then they just go on normally. Is that possible?
Absolutely. So the main thing is if you get good weight loss post-pregnancy, there is an overall risk, but it is lessened by active lifestyle modifications. So diet, exercise, keeping the weight down will reduce your risk going forward. So if someone's quite healthy, around a 25% risk of developing diabetes lifelong.
We talked about type 2 diabetes. Let's talk about type 1. And let's also talk about signs and symptoms, presentation obviously, and treatment options. And I've just thrown a whole host of questions at you.
Okay.
Off air too, we spoke about the newer drugs on the market and the efficacy of those drugs. So let's start with the other types of diabetes. And would you say as an endocrinologist that there's a particular type that you would say is deadlier perhaps than the others?
All diabetes is deadly from a point of view of complications. So the main complications where it attacks or affects the arteries and causes narrowing of the arteries. So heart attacks, stroke, gangrene of the feet are the big arteries. Where it affects the small arteries, it affects the retina or the back of the eye, causing blindness. Can affect the kidneys, necessitating, will cause kidney failure and necessitating dialysis. And then the nerves as well. So a lot of diabetics will present with burning feet, etc. So that's the nervous degeneration. Now going on to with respect to type 1 diabetes, I alluded to it earlier, but that's an autoimmune condition where it attacks the beta cells of the pancreas. In type 1 diabetes, the treatment is insulin. Oral therapies won't work. Now this is typically a problem of youth. However, things are changing with respect to that because...
Problem of youth, just expand on that.
So generally it happens in the younger age group with type 1 diabetes because it's an autoimmune conditions, they tend to present a bit earlier. What happens now is that because of the increasing incidence of obesity, sedentary lifestyle with our children, you're getting more obese children, and I'm frequently seeing more type 2 diabetes in the younger age group as well.
Right, can you hold that thought please? I think we have a call online, and thereafter we're going to have to wrap up. We are talking diabetes with Dr. Kershla Naidu, and if you have any questions or comments, please do call in on the open line. I've just been told that the caller has dropped, and we're having a few technical problems in the studio this morning, so I'm not able to hear the producers giving me instructions, so we do apologize for that. We'll continue our discussion and start wrapping up in a few minutes' time with Dr. Kershla Naidu. We were talking about, well, we've touched on type 1, we've touched on type 2. Anything else we need to know? And I think I asked you the question about drugs, newer generation drugs, and how that is hopefully playing a positive role in the control of diabetes.
Okay, so the newer therapies are quite exciting because the first thing that I would tell you when you're diagnosed with diabetes is to lose weight. However, a lot of the diabetes medications cause weight gain, so that is counterproductive. Right. So there's a few ones that actually are weight neutral and that can cause weight loss in addition to assist you with weight loss. So metformin or glucophage, great. It's weight neutral, can lose weight as well. There's newer classes of drugs which are called the GLP-1 agonists or DPP-4 inhibitors. They're a nice new class of drugs which control your sugar, don't bring it too low, but they cause weight loss as well. And then the latest addition to our armamentarium is what's called a SGLT2 inhibitor. And it works on the kidney where you actually pee out the glucose. Okay. So it causes weight loss, controls your sugars, blood pressures. Really interesting stuff.
Okay, I've just been getting some crazy signals here from my producer. I think we need to wrap up. In closing, what do you have to say about World Diabetes Day and specifically the focus being on women?
So just to close up is the awareness of gestational diabetes. Number one is recognition, control in pregnancy, and the long-term follow-up with respect to that, because I think that's quite a very important thing to consider.
Lifestyle, diet and exercise.
Lifestyle, diet,
you can't emphasize more. Yeah. Dr. Kershla Naidu, thank you indeed for being with us, and we do hope that we sent across a very strong message as far as diabetes is concerned. We do hope that you've enjoyed this show, and you can get hold of Dr. Kirshner if you do want to obviously engage with him as far as your condition is concerned. Still to come, we're going to be talking to the National Anti-Hijacking Academy, and later on in the show we'll be looking at the Palestinian issue, or the Solidarity Group, who are promoting a walk next week Saturday right here in Johannesburg. Welcome back. We're now going to be talking about anti-hijacking methods. It is that time of year. I wonder, I'm saying that it is that time of year towards the festive season, and we do know that home invasions, robberies, hijackings, etc. does seem to increase at this time of year. We're going to ask our guests what the reason might be for this, and what do we do to protect ourselves from all of these type of invasions, hijackings, breaking in at homes, businesses, etc. Mr. Richard Brousseau from the National Hijacking Prevention Academy, good morning, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
You've heard my intro. It's that time of year, it's silly season, all sorts of crazy, outrageous and silly things start happening this time of year, including an increase in house robberies, invasions, call them what you will, but it is an outrage on you as a person, being robbed of your hard-earned cash, your home being broken into. In the process, maybe a life is lost as well, including hijackings. They are on the increase this time of year. But just hold that thought. Let us first give a proper introduction to you and the Academy. You from the National Hijacking Prevention Academy. What is that all about, and why are you involved with them? Why do you believe that this company plays an important role in South Africa?
Firstly, I was in the police for 29 years, but specializing in vehicle hijack syndicate operations. And then in the year 2000s, we decided, you know what, instead of just fighting the crime, you know, for example, the vehicle has been hijacked, let's go and find the vehicle. Let's design a training course whereby we can educate the people, you know, to make it more difficult for the hijacker to read certain signs, etc. So the course was designed, it's about 3 hours long, where 85% of the course handles around how do I prevent a vehicle hijacking. An additional 15% in the event of it happening, how do I give the vehicle away in a non-threatening manner, making yourself a smaller target, hiding various body organs, for example. So yes, basically we started in 2000. I'm the chief instructor there at the National Hijack Prevention Academy.
And you come with years and years and years of experience, so well done. Where are you based?
We are based in Centurion, but we do training countrywide.
Wonderful. And I do know that you do specialize, or lots of corporate companies and large companies do engage with you to obviously train their staff. But what about private individuals? Do you run courses for them as well?
We do. You know, one can phone our office and courses can be arranged for private individuals to join existing groups, or, for example, do a one-on-one. We do a lot of one-on-one training for expats in South Africa, but then we incorporate the advanced driving, especially the defensive driving part of that, where we take the people out on the road, and instead of sitting in a classroom form listening to everything we say, we do it practical on the road. So contact the office, a plan can be made.
When you talk about advanced driving, what is this all about, and how does it tie in with anti-hijacking measures that one can take?
I believe the two run very close to each other, especially defensive driving out on the road. How to lift your awareness levels, how to anticipate potential dangers, identify, predict, decide, execute, for example. So the defensive driving part is crucial. It can go hand in hand with the prevention of vehicle hijacking.
you are talking about a 3-hour course, and you're also talking about taking the people out, your clients out onto the road, and then giving them all of those skills. But talk us through this. Let's assume, you know, you just merrily gone to the shopping mall, did your shopping, you're now on your way home. What are the type of things that one ought to be looking out for? How do I make myself hyper alert or hyper vigilant without becoming neurotic?
Correct. You know, there's a very thin line between paranoia and just being safe. Just be careful overstepping the boundaries that you become paranoid. But let's start in the beginning. Most people in South Africa leave their homes between 6:30 and 7:30 in the morning. We normally arrive home between 4:30 and 7 o'clock. Those are the peak times for vehicle hijacking. You must keep in mind the hijackers don't have a lifestyle like us. The hijackers don't get to the 27th, 28th of the month. Now they decide, I still need another 2 vehicles because I must pay the water and lights, the Mnet, the school fees. They don't live that way. They basically live for now. So you know, a hijacker might take a car on a Friday. Fridays are easy to understand why the numbers are high. There's more cars on the road on a Friday. Traffic peaks earlier on a Friday. Normally in the week by 3:45, traffic starts getting dense in Gauteng. But by Fridays, by about 2 o'clock. So that gives the robbers a 2-hour extra operational time. They sometimes even hit 2 cars, as we call it, on a Friday. A quick example, 3 hijackers, they normally work in a group of 3, the pointer, the searcher, and the driver. The pointer is the brain. A group of 3 guys together, how much do you think they will receive for a little Polo Vivo in Gauteng?
I have no idea.
4,500 rand.
Oh,
not each, all together. Now the brain normally takes the most of the money, the pointer, so he takes about 2,000 rand. The additional money that's left, the other 2 guys have to split. What do they normally spend their money on? The top 4, girls, clothing, alcohol, drugs run together, and cars. What I mean by cars, fuel and stuff like that. When that money is finished, they go and hunt once again. You know, over the last 11 years, doing a lot of work for the police and statistics, we've come up and seen that Tuesdays and Fridays are really the hot times in Gauteng, if we can call it that, where there's just so much more hijackings than other days. If you drive home in the afternoons and you have to travel on a freeway, a motorway, every big residential area in South Africa that's near an off-ramp has got a filling station within the first 500 meters. If you get a group of hijackers together here today and you say to them, listen, I want the new BMW, the F30, 90% of them will say, we'll go William Nicol Drive. If you say to them, I want Toyota, let's say the Hilux or the Fortuner, 90% will say, we'll go Old Johannesburg off-ramp and Centurion. So they know exactly where to go, these guys. If you drive home, especially on the Fridays and the Tuesdays, and you take an off-ramp on the way home, that first filling station you encounter, normally on the left, just have a look at the filling station. No, I'm not necessarily say have a look at the cars putting in fuel, but especially the last 3 or 4 parking bays closest to the main road. They like to sit and they wait for their target vehicles. There's a very big saying in Gauteng under the car criminals where they say to themselves, the car that you are looking for will come looking for you. They sit, they hunt, they wait for their target vehicles, and they like to follow you out. So if you pass that filling station, just have a quick glance. What cars are standing around there, especially near the exits? As you go by, about 5-10 seconds later, check the center mirror. They might have pulled out and they're 50-60 meters behind you. If you enter a residential area now and there's a car that scares you, you know, over the years I've heard many questions where people come and say, but what cars do the robbers drive? 2 years ago, that was not a difficult question. I would have answered predominantly Toyotas or VWs. Nowadays, anything is a possibility. But a funny part, we've picked up over the last 2 years, if they follow you in residential areas where it's freestanding houses, not security estates, they sometimes like to use cars that you would least expect a robber to drive. I'll give you a quick example. Over the years, we've always had this mental picture where we believe but robbers drive fancy cars. You know, the BMW 3 Class, the Audi A4, A3, the Golf GTIs and so. But nowadays, things have changed. They will sometimes arrive in a Kia Sportage, a Kia Soul, Soul. And you know what, if you look at a Kia Soul, not picking on certain cars now, but it's not the type of car that talks to you. Because no, but robbers don't drive those cars, Richard. So in certain cars, by driving those cars, it allows them to get closer to your house without drawing any attention. Any vehicle is a possibility nowadays. If you drive home in the afternoons, lift your awareness. If there's a car that scares you for whatever reason, drive a bit slower. If you suddenly drive at 20 kilometers an hour and you put your indicator onto the left, what are you forcing cars behind you to do?
To overtake.
This is Gauteng. Everybody's impatient. Just be careful. They're not stupid, these robbers. They're clever. They don't like to stay behind you for too long, because the robber knows if we stay behind you for too long, it starts getting difficult. You're drawing too much attention. So they sometimes read you. They stay behind you for a while, and if you don't make a move and stop where they can just box you in, they sometimes like to overtake. The robbers know as soon as they've overtaken you, what will your brain say? It's
safe.
Nothing. There they go. They sometimes go down the road, make a U-turn and come back. We've also seen they like to overtake. Then they judge the rest of the road that is left now. What is around about the middle? And they sometimes select the driveway on the opposite side of the road. It's purely to drive in, turn the head and see what you are doing in your driveway. So we have to lift our awareness levels. I don't like talking days, you know, Tuesdays and Fridays and so, because people sometimes misunderstand. They think nothing happens on a Monday or Tuesday. Every day must be exactly the same.
Okay, Richard, when I introduced you to the show just now, I indicated silly season. It's that time of year. We have been led to believe that this time of year, everything spikes, all forms of robberies, including hijackings. Would you agree with me?
They do increase silly season. People are more relaxed. And there's also a tendency the robbers need money. It's
and they need
season.
Their bonus as well.
Of course. This is a business, and this is what people don't understand. As soon as the robber's money is finished, they basically go and hunt once again. And that's what I always emphasize big in training is, when you arrive home in the afternoons and you've entered your property, stop, wait for the gate to close behind you immediately. You know, a hijacking is bad, but a house robbery is 1,000 times worse. If anything happens, let's limit the crime to only a hijacking. Let's not let it run over into a house robbery. The mistakes we make is we leave the gates open, especially festive season. You're relaxed, you had a long year, you're tired, you leave the gate open, you drive in with your cars and you go and park the vehicle. The deeper in you go, the deeper you're pulling the robbers in with you. Currently, except cash and transit robberies, house robberies are one of the most lucrative crimes they can commit, because they can empty your whole house.
Okay, let's go for an ad break. When we come back, let's see if you can share some statistics and also more tips to our viewers as to how they can protect themselves, not only against hijackings, but other invasions as well. Richard Brousseau is my guest. He's from the National Hijacking Prevention Academy. They're based in Centurion. And if you would like to sign up for a course for your family and all of your loved ones, then please get in touch with them. They are more than happy. That's their job. It is their job to teach us how to become more safe, savvy against hijacking and other invasions. Welcome back, and we're talking about silly season. Not only do we need to be alert to car hijackings, but a whole host of other invasions. And Richard Brousseau from the National Hijacking Prevention Academy is here to talk to us about the dangers, and he's also going to give us a couple of tips as to how we can protect ourselves. But I think further than that, the good news is that if you'd like your loved ones and yourself to go on one of these courses, it just makes you that much more alert and that much more ready, I should imagine, or prepared for an invasion, and hopefully you can then respond in a more protective way towards the hijackers. Hopefully you won't get injured, you won't lose your life, and you can also leave the very horrible, threatening situation with your loved ones in a very, very safe way. Would that be correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. What is it that you do or don't do to provoke anger and a very serious response or reaction from hijackers or invaders, home invaders?
I've got a theory where I always say, if I can see the color of the weapon that is pointed at me, and I can see it's either a silver or a black firearm, my brain must be able to say, hey, they're going to cause me grievous bodily harm with that firearm. I do exactly what they say. If they say go down, lie on the ground in a home invasion, you do exactly what they say. Don't argue the point. But I'm glad you mentioned that now, because what is increasing also during silly season is where the robbers go and they ask for the ladies' jewelry, especially the rings. Now, you know, over the years, you gain a little bit of weight, so and so after the marriage, so the ring on your finger doesn't come off that easily anymore. The robber is shouting, give me the ring the whole time. And a natural reaction for ladies when they hand over the jewelry, if the ring can't come off, they put their fingers in their mouths because you want to wet the finger and slip the ring off. There's a large number of cases coming through, especially silly season, where the ladies battle to get the rings off. That's when the hijacker or the robber grabs your arm, he puts his teeth behind the ring, and they bite off skin meat with the jewelry. Now, I'm not saying you must safeguard your jewelry, but if you battle to get it off, you wrap your one hand over the other hand, and you show them with a bit of body language, but you are trying, a bit of role play, but move. Maybe they leave the ring on your finger because the vehicle or other items are greater of interest for them.
Okay, so just try and be, but I guess in a situation like that, you're panicking yourself. You can't, common sense does not prevail in a situation like that because you are panicked.
You are.
Absolutely panicked. Let's go back to the hijacking, the car hijackings. You spoke about the spotter and two other role players. What is going to happen? Let's assume they spot me at a garage, they want my car. What's playing on? How they're communicating with each other via cell phone, I should imagine.
A cell phone, yes, but when you look at vehicle hijackings, very seldomly do you have them in separate cars. They normally are grouped together. As I mentioned, the pointer, the searcher, and the driver. They will, for example, sit at a filling station, let's say 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They're looking for a common car, as they refer to it. Common cars, Toyotas, VWs, and so on. They'll see the car driving past, and I'll give you a quick example. Let's imagine you driving home now. It's 5 o'clock. In the back left corner of your vehicle, there's a baby seat inside the vehicle. The child's already inside the seat. How do the robbers read a picture like that? Mommy's on her way home. Mommy has already picked up child at the daycare. Mommy has not seen her child for 9 hours. So that tells me mommy's focus is mostly on the child. From the off-ramp, the filling station to your house cannot be more than 10 kilometers. What is mommy's awareness? 0. What's the first thing mommy says after she has been hijacked and we arrive to investigate? Richard, they came from nowhere. It was guns and knives all over the place. They spotting cars. They see Range Rover Sport coming past. Not picking on the vehicle, just an example. Do they follow the Range Rover home, hijack the individual at his house, or will they say, follow the Range Rover, but we must get him off the road before he gets home? Get him off the road before he gets home.
Why?
Look at the value attached to the motor vehicle. If you drive a vehicle that is worth 1.4, 1.7 million rand, where do you stay? Security estate. They don't want to fight with the guards. So follow the individual home. I don't want to fight with the guard, or halfway home, give him a little bump from behind, or use the blue light technique. We don't want to go and fight with the guards. We have to get him off the road before he gets home. They see you tomorrow or Monday afternoon driving 3 o'clock in the afternoon. In the back of your car, let's say Toyota Fortuner, very common car in South Africa, Gauteng. They see there are 2 school kids in the vehicle. How do they read that picture? Do they follow you home, or do they try and get you off the road before you get home? They read it as follows. They say, why did daddy buy mommy a vehicle like that? Let's be honest now, Toyota Fortuner is a lovely vehicle, but it's not a lady's car. So daddy bought mommy that vehicle. Why did daddy buy mommy that car? Because safety and security is high on daddy's priority list. He's worried about the safety of his wife and kids. So he bought mommy something big in the lower price bracket of the SUVs, so that if things go wrong, mommy can just accelerate and drive over and through things. The chances of living in a security estate is 70%, 30% free freestanding house. They basically read us before they decide what one to go for.
So when they now approach the lady in the car, or even they hijacking men as well, what's the modus operandi? Is it the element of surprise?
Element of surprise, yes. They normally box you in, they stop behind you. 2 individuals will go to the driver's side and 1 individual to the passenger side. It depends on how many there are, but larger percentage, they work in 3s.
You're saying that they box you in, so I'm assuming there are 2 cars involved.
Normally 1 vehicle, you've turned into your home driveway. So your car's nose is facing your house. Now the biggest mistake people make is panic takes over, which is a natural reaction. But if they box you in and they're already at your motor vehicle, you will hands up immediately, showing to the attacker that you're no threat to them whatsoever. The problem now comes in is 7 out of 10 men in South Africa are right-handed. You write with this hand. Where would a man normally place a weapon inside a motor vehicle while he's driving? You know that pocket in the door there? Yes. Maybe between the legs or on the side, yeah. 7 out of 10 men will do this. Imagine driving something big like a Toyota Hilux, a Ford Ranger. What counts against a vehicle like that if the gun is pointed at you already? You high, they can't look down on you. So the slightest move you make like this, what does the person think on the outside? You're reaching. I will hands up. I am no threat to you whatsoever. With my left hand, I will unlock the door. Most cars worldwide, if you take the door lever and you pull it, the door unlocks. When your left hand goes down to the seat belt catch, be very careful pressing it now. Now you lift the hand. Before you climb out, you remember, hey, I have not taken my car out of gear, and your foot slips off that clutch or the brake. If I scare somebody, it results in a muscle contraction. I'm scared, my foot slipping off, that car jumping, and it gets a muscle contraction. So when your hand goes down, you'll keep it down there, move it a little bit forward. In a manual, take it out of gear. In an automatic, pull up the handbrake. Don't fiddle with the gears in an automatic. If you pull up the handbrake, the car will stand still. As you exit the vehicle now, if it's possible, try and turn your body sideways as you exit. By going sideways, we tend to become smaller. Okay, not everybody becomes, but you're smaller. Turn your body, lift your shoulders, very soft tissue in your neck area. I don't want bullet to hit neck. Let your shoulder blades work for you. Hands not safeguarding you, yeah, over your head and neck as quickly as possible. This is not going to stop a bullet. We all agree. You might lose use of the hand or the arm. You might walk like this forever, but you might survive this ordeal.
Why are they taking lives? I mean, you've already surrendered. Why do they still have to shoot you or attack you or beat you up and leave you to a pulp?
Ma'am, taking lives, there's a lot of factors, or I couldn't say factors, but the newspaper guys sensationalize most of the stories. Then I arrive at a scene, an individual has been shot, and I'll say, all right, the newspapers say viciously shot for no reason or so, but then you look deeper into the case. Couldn't it have been that your hand movement was wrong? The guy got a fright on the outside. The average age of these attackers are between 19 to 25, 26 years of age. There might be drugs involved. So it's very difficult to identify why the shooting, that extra little bit of violence comes in. But violence and shooting and hijacking is a very, very small percentage, extremely small in South Africa.
What do we then worry about if you're saying that it's very small in South Africa, the violence and the shooting with hijackings? Is it more the home invasions?
Home invasion, yes. The problem with home invasion is they spend a large number of time with you. And that's what we call stupid time, where they start touching you, grabbing you. Daddy tries to protect the family and fight back and stuff like that. We've done cases where they hijack people on Friday afternoons between 4 and 7 o'clock. They force you inside the house. So hijacking escalates into house robbery. They ask for your wallets and purses. What's inside? Bank cards. One individual goes down the road. They start drawing money out of your account. The main objective here is they want that little piece of paper to come out of the machine. They want to see balance, and they want to see what the available amount is they can draw. If that available amount is 5,000 Rand and higher, they're going to push their luck. They're going to try and draw money Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. My biggest fear is a house robbery. What's going to happen to you and your family from Friday night 7 o'clock until Monday morning 2, 3 o'clock in the morning? That is what scares me.
Time for us to wrap up. Your final piece of advice for hijackings. What do you do immediately after it's happened, and how you protect yourself from a home invasion?
People, we have to lift our awareness levels. You know, those days of thinking it won't happen to you, it can happen to anybody in South Africa. Lift your awareness levels. Don't just assume things. Make sure before you get home. If you got a family at home and so, stay in contact with them. Give them your car details, color, model registration number and stuff. We're going away. We want to enjoy the festive season. Communicate with people when you go traveling on our roads. This is the time I leave home. This is my vehicle details. And try every hour to be in communication with them before we actually set off.
Richard Bristol, thank you indeed for all of those very useful tips. Scary stuff, is it not? And we do know that all of these invasions, hijackings, etc., is now going to be on the increase. Please, people, be vigilant. Don't try and be a hero. I know that you do want to protect your loved ones, but rather just give things. Don't react, rather respond, cower down. Don't make any threatening moves. Just give over your valuables, because that you can get back, but a life gone is gone forever. And we're into the final 15 minutes of the show this morning. We're going to be talking about a wonderful event happening next week, Saturday, here in Emmarentia, Johannesburg. It is the Walk for Palestine. And in studio right now, we have Ismail Mullah. He is from the PSA. We're going to talk about his involvement in the organization and what more needs to be done and is being done to alleviate the plight of the Palestinian people. Ismail, assalamu alaikum, welcome.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's always a pleasure to be on ITV. I've been here many times.
Oh, lovely, lovely. So you know the drill.
We know the drill. But always I would like to thank all media in terms of giving us the platform in articulating happenings or activities that are taking place in Palestine.
I think it is our duty as Muslims, and I think off air we just spoke about, I asked you, why are you so vested in PSA and the Palestinian issue?
Well, you know, we were debating because I mentioned to you that firstly, as a Muslim, we will always have a very strong connection to the land, obviously because of Masjid al-Aqsa. But the other aspect of it is that it is not a religious conflict. Mm-hmm. The conflict is about humanitarian needs, and it's about land. Mm-hmm. And the similarities between what we have in South Africa and the similarities of what is happening in Palestine is very clear for all to see.
True.
And we always like to use the famous quote of our Madiba, that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians.
How do you feel being so involved in this organization, having lived through apartheid yourself, knowing that in this modern day and age, in the 21st century, that there is still such oppression and submission in the land of Palestine? And I guess if you look at the Rohingya situation, that too is a similar situation. How does it make you feel?
Of course we are hurt and we are disillusioned. And you know, when you talk about corruption, and this is now a big word in South Africa in terms of our own politics, and we talk about state capture, if we look at the Palestinian situation, then we're talking about global capture. That means that institutions that have been put in place in order to assist those that cannot assist themselves, those institutions themselves are captured. Mm-hmm. So you are finding that organizations like the United Nations cannot act even against their own charter. If you look at the ICC, in violation of their own rules, they are powerless because the powers that be are captured.
True.
So state capture is not only a South African thing.
True.
When we analyze the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian loss of land, the inability of the Palestinians to have access to basic stuff like water, basic stuff like education, basic stuff like healthcare.
Freedom of movement.
Freedom of movement.
Splitting up of families.
There's so much you can go on. What is the community, the world community at large doing? What are institutions that are supposed to be protecting these marginalized people doing about it?
They
Absolutely
don't care
nothing.
because it's not white people, it is brown people that you're talking about. Brown people don't have, they are nothing. They don't have an identity, and in the Balfour Declaration, Balfour then said that they are intellectually inferior to the white man.
Absolutely. But you know, 3 weeks ago we had that horrific bombing in Ethiopia, where almost 300 people have died. But if you look at our own Muslim brothers, no building in Dubai was changed to the Ethiopian flag colors. So we cannot always look at the West in terms of their inactivity. But where is our Muslims community? Where is our Muslim leaders? Where are our Muslim countries in terms of showing that there are lives that are being lost, and every life, no matter whose life it is sacred. So what you are saying is absolutely true. But are we all in our own ways also thinking in that way, that a white life is valued more than a non-white
Black life.
And when these tragedies happened, and when Somalia happened, sadly, even amongst our own communities, what did we do?
I hasten to add that I think, alhamdulillah, here in South Africa, the Muslim population always comes to the fore when there are disasters or problems around the world. We know we have many, many organizations that are always trying to do their bit. So I think we need to give them credit for that.
I understand. But I personally, there is a difference between being reactive and being proactive. And as Muslims, the challenge that we have is that we should be proactive. By us being reactionary.
Give me an example.
Well, as you're saying, whenever there is a crisis, then we are pouring our hearts, and then we are taking out our monies, and then we are donating it. But even in our own situations, I mean, you had the gentleman earlier speaking about hijacking, which is close to all of us. And majority of us in some way have been affected in it, either through personal experience or through a family experience. I am saying, where are Muslim institutions? Where are Muslim organizations? Why is it that we are not having proactive activities in terms of what the gentleman spoke about?
Point taken. Let's go to the PSA. Your involvement here, and let's look at the issue around what did you guys roll out this year, and what can we look forward to in terms of support and raising of funds for the Palestinian issue?
Well, the thing is that, you know, the PSA is very active in terms of articulating Palestinian views in terms of articulating Palestinian rights. And over the years, we've always been involved in campaigns, marches, rallies, bringing people over.
Do they make a difference?
Well, remember, I mean, you know, one of the critical thoughts of the Zionists when they created the state of Palestine, when they created the state of Israel, was that the young will forget and the old will die. So the fact that we are 70 years almost still talking about Palestine and still remembering our land and still remembering those that have lost their lives, for me, that in itself is a victory.
Let's look at the people in Palestine itself. Are they aware, and are there ways for the PSA and BDS and other such organizations to keep them abreast of the type of initiatives that are running in support of the Palestinian people? And monies raised, do they get to the much needed aid that the Palestinian people need?
To answer the first part of the question, you know, today we live in a global world. And that makes communication between different people from different parts of the world much more easier.
And with social media.
And with social media. So in terms of that, everybody knows everything what everybody is doing. I myself have been in contact with the Palestinians. I've been to Gaza. I've been to West Bank. So they're au fait. They hold South Africa in very high regard.
Alhamdulillah.
As South Africans, they look upon us as a role model in terms of what we have achieved here. And obviously, we know that the relationship between the ANC and the liberation movement, the PLO of Palestine, was very close. In fact, they were fighting the same battles.
True.
They were in the same trenches.
True.
That's what hurts us in terms of our current government's policy. Because these are all ex-activists
True.
that understood the struggle and knew the similarities between our struggle and the Palestinian struggle. So it's sad for us where we have to force our government to say, shut down your Israeli ambassador, send him home, close the embassies, stop the trade.
But some of the ministers just recently engaged with the Israeli government.
This is what politics is about. Mm-hmm. And in this regard, I mean, we took part with the march together with the EFF in regard to the Balfour Declaration 2 weeks ago.
That's right.
And the EFF is the only political party that has spoken out and said that in 2009, it will vote for the shutting down of the Israeli embassy. And that is a very remarkable thing, because I think if we're looking at the South African political context, the days of one party ruling is over. I think in 2009, in 2019, we're going to get coalition politics.
Okay, let's leave that for when the time comes. We're focusing on Palestine now. And the funds, there are a lot of organizations that are raising funds for the Palestinian cause.
Yes.
Are we able to get the funds across to the neediest of the needy? Are they being spent in the way we want it to be? You can't control the spending of the funds, but is it being utilized where it's needed most?
It's a very difficult thing to answer. And the thing is that, again, even when we are donating monies, Allah will judge you based on your intention.
True.
We don't have people on the ground like other organizations. And when we are collecting zakat money and things like that, we prefer to give it to those organizations that have people on the ground, and they are then seeing to the actual distribution of monies and things like that. But Allah knows best.
But as PSA, you are trying to keep the Palestinian issue in mainstream media for people to know the atrocities that are being visited on the Palestinian people. That being said, there are two issues that we need to touch on. The destruction or the fact that the olive trees, which we know is the mainstay of the Palestinian, supposed to be the mainstay of the economy. Apparently, tens of thousands of those trees have been destroyed by the Zionists. What's happening in that in that regard? And as the PSA and BDS, are you guys trying to send money to plant new olive trees?
Yes, the thing is that there are different campaigns at all times. And the reality is that Zionists at the end of the day will want to stifle the economy of Palestinians and make their livelihood as difficult as possible. You are aware also that it takes a long time for an olive tree to bear its fruit. So it is a real tragedy in the sense that Palestinians are nursing these trees, and when the time comes for them to pick their crops, Zionists, under the auspices of military protection, go there and reap the benefit of it. The critical thing here is that, again, this is happening in the glare of the international community. That means that television is there, social media is there, people are documenting everything. But what is the response?
Very poor.
Absolutely
very poor. With, of course, the exception of people like yourselves, your organizations that are scattered all around the world. Do you affiliate with the other pro-Palestinian organizations globally, number one? And number two, before we've got about 2 minutes to go to wrap up time, we need to touch on the walk next week.
Okay.
So do you have contact?
Well, yes, remember, there are national campaigns. You get like the Red Card Israel campaign in regard to...
International, yes.
It's an international campaign. You talk about the flotillas. which the PSA is very active in.
Of course.
Those are international campaigns.
Was the last one this year, was it successful, the flotilla?
Well, the one that we did was the previous year. That was
Right.
the women's boat to Gaza.
Did that happen?
That happened.
And successful?
And successful. Successful in the sense that our people got arrested.
Right.
And then they were deported. But I mean, the thing is that the attempt to break the siege has been there. There is another flotilla that is being planned in 2018, but that's still in the planning stages. BDS itself is also a international movement. So we are associated with these global events. And again, thanks to the internet, thanks to social media, it's very easy for us to connect with these issues.
The walk next week, what's it all about? Where is it? It's going to be lots of fun, but in having a lot of fun, you are going to create and raise awareness and raise funds for a very worthy cause.
Well, you know, this is our 8th Walk for Freedom.
Alhamdulillah.
And the concept of the walk was actually started by a gentleman by the name of Majid Ali. And he came to us one meeting and he said, you know what, we're always doing activism, we're always saying boycott, we always say stop this, end that. It's always negative connotations. He said we need to do something that is fun. And let the family come with the grandchildren and grandmothers, nannies, daddies, dadas, all of them, and have some fun and activity.
And still a very strong and pertinent message will get down to the entire family.
Absolutely.
Alhamdulillah.
So that is why we have this walk. We call it a fun walk. It's not supposed to be anything that is supposed to be competitive. And, you know, we've been trying for a long time to get something in Joburg. Because the thing is that we are always strong in our, sorry, but to use the terminology, the apartheid Muslim areas. And Joburg is the new vibe, where a lot of our people have now moved on to. So we've been struggling for 8 years to try and establish some sort of base there. And now, alhamdulillah, you know, we've got some very powerful women. Shirin Saluji, Firoza Karodia, Shirin Bulbulia. So they've taken up this challenge and very innovative. So they've come up with this walk, which is going to be an evening walk. So we've never had an evening walk.
Right, so it starts at 5 o'clock at
5
the
o'clock.
Emerentia Dam.
Emerentia Dam.
But the good news is that the actual event is going to start at 2 o'clock, where you can, the entire families can come and picnic, buy goods.
Well, if you are in Joburg, then you know the current flavor in Joburg is pop-up stalls.
True.
And, you know, people are following these stalls.
Right.
So our young dynamic team have decided to embrace the concept. So we've got pop-up stores that are going to be there from 2 o'clock.
Right.
It's a Saturday. So what we are saying is that, you know, a lot of people on a Saturday eat out. Saturday evenings is a night where they're spending out.
True.
We are saying to the people, come and join us and celebrate your Saturday evening with us and enjoy these pop-up stores, because it's a gourmet
And
event.
all in the cause of the Palestinian issue, obviously.
Absolutely.
The walk, to enter the walk will cost a mere 20 Rand per person.
Minimum donation.
And of course you could come with your 200,000
Yes,
if you like.
yes, absolutely.
And just support a very, very worthy cause and expose your children to the Palestinian issue, because they're going to ask you questions. They're going to ask, what is this about? Here's an opportunity. You can tell them you're having a fun day, but it's in support of a very, very worthy cause. Time for me to wrap up. Thank you so much for being with me. Last word from you.
Yes, once again, I will appeal to everybody. Please, you know, use your Facebook connections, use your social media connections, and get people out there. We want people out there in numbers, and come and enjoy the evening with us.
Inshallah. Thank you.
Inshallah. Thank you.
And there you have it. Sounds like lots of fun. Time for us to wrap up. Thank you for being with us on the show this morning. Loved your company. Hope that you'll join us next time around. A big thank you to the production team, as always, very, very hardworking. And the show can't go on the road without them. So a big thank you to the production team. Till the next time, as always, it is Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Alli.
يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا